Hello, Patriots. Welcome to the channel. On this video, we're going to be talking about what Governor Beshear is doing, what he is not doing, and what he should be doing, but unfortunately, he's not planning on doing. Now, let's talk about the first one of these things. He was asked today about, is he ever going to reopen Kentucky businesses and offices? Because right now, he's limited them to 50% capacity. So still, half of the people who work in offices are still supposed to be laid off, not getting a check, and the business is only supposed to be at 50% of the capability it has through its staffing. And he was asked, hey, when are you going to open this back up and let everybody go back to work? And his answer, we're going to play it for you here in a second, was basically until there's a vaccine, he doesn't intend to ever really fully reopen Kentucky. He doesn't mention this vaccine as the answer, not just once or twice, but 3 different times in this press conference. He pushes this idea, unless there's a vaccine, we're just never going to get back. But don't take my word for it. Let's listen to Governor Beshear in his own words.
The question is on offices which are at 50%, and is there a next phase that'll increase that percentage, and will they still have to wear masks and social distance? Let me say, until there is a vaccine, masks and social distancing are both critical. We can continue to try to manage this virus until there is a vaccine. Listen, I know we've been dealing with COVID for a while, and I know we're going to have to deal with it until that vaccine comes.
So repeatedly, you heard him say, hey, vaccine, vaccine, vaccine. Well, keep this in mind. First of all, they may never find a vaccine. So, I mean, think about the swine flu that happened several years ago. They still don't have a cure or a vaccine for that one. And there's a bunch of other viruses they've been researching for years, and they still never did find one. So does he mean to say, listen, I intend to keep all these people unemployed basically for my entire term? If I'm there 3.5 more years or for 8 years, I'm never going to let you go back until there's a vaccine. Or if they get one, is he going to make it mandatory where if you want to come into the Capitol or somewhere else, you have to take it? You want to go back to work? You want to get insurance? You want to send your kid to school? You have to take this into your body. Very concerned about this idea that we can't get back to life. Even when the number of deaths is incredibly low, the recovery rate is incredibly high unless there's a vaccine. Very bad idea, very bad policy that he keeps pushing. But talking about those who pass away or don't pass away from the virus. Remember here about a week and a half ago, we had all these big protests throughout Kentucky, mostly in Louisville, but also in some of the other cities. And the people in these protests, look at the video and look at the pictures, and you're going to notice, you're going to see 2 things over and over again. 1, there is no social distancing. Number 2, a lot of the people in these protests are not wearing masks. So Governor Beshear keeps saying, hey, if you don't social distance, if you don't wear a mask, then we're going to have all these deaths. Well, we had thousands of people who didn't do either one of those things. So unless there's this huge spike in deaths in about 2 or 3 weeks, if there's not, you know what that means? It means social distancing and wearing a mask is pointless because we had thousands of people not doing that, and then we're actually going to see what actually happens. And here's my little guess. We are not going to see a huge spike in deaths here in about 2 or 3 weeks. So mark that down wherever you mark things down. Let's talk about one of the things that he is doing. He is planning on calling a special session of the Kentucky General Assembly this summer. Now, the reason for that is because Kentucky is losing tons of money because of the policies that he's been pushing this year. As we've mentioned in previous broadcasts, all of the other governors in all 49 other states have done a better job at protecting their unemployment rates than Governor Beshear has. According to his own information, Kentucky rates the absolute worst run state in the entire country as far as unemployment per capita. And so we're not making a lot of money. So he's going to call a special session and have the General Assembly come in to see about fixing the revenue problem. Now, that's a fancy way of saying, hey, you guys need to raise taxes. And he's going to pressure them because of his policies that they need to raise taxes. And you know what's going to happen if they do that? Then in 3.5 years, when he's up for election again, he's going to blame the Republican-led General Assembly for raising taxes. And that's what's exactly going to happen. So I hope you'll contact your legislator and encourage them to not give in to this pressure and not to raise taxes. And that will bring pressure back onto him to reopen our state fully. Let people go back to work fully. Let people go back to businesses fully. That is what will generate income without increasing taxes on the people. Well, what he does need to do with a special session, now keep this in mind about special sessions. The General Assembly cannot legally call itself into session. Only the governor can do that until January when they're planning to come in normally. And if the governor does call a special session, the General Assembly is only allowed to do business that deals with that specific issue that they were called into session for. So what is something that Governor Beshear should plan on doing, but he's not planning on doing? What he should plan on doing is calling a special session of the General Assembly to help deal with this virus crisis. After all, hasn't he said, hey, the entire state is the scene of the emergency? I've got all these emergency powers because the entire state's an emergency. Therefore, he should call them in and be able to have more checks and balances into running the government. Because right now, the General Assembly can't really have any real input in any of the decisions that are being made. All they can do is complain about it, or they can maybe agree with it, that they get no choice on doing anything. Remember what it says in the Declaration of Independence, that good government comes from the consent of the governed. That is what our founding fathers set up. And the best way to have it be the consent of the governed is to have the legislative branch be able to come in and to have real viable input and checks and balances to the decisions that are being made. It is election season after all, so those people would really be listening extra to the people in their districts. What he should be doing, but he's not planning on doing. Now let's talk about having elections. The elections have been pushed back till June the 23rd. And Governor Beshear has been pushing this idea that you have to do mail-in voting. Oh, yes, we'll have some in-person places, but mostly mail-in voting. Now, if you want to mail-in vote, do not forget, you must request your mail-in ballot no later than June the 15th. And if you don't, your only option is to vote in person. But here's part of the big problems is he set up a lot of counties that only have one voting location, such as over in Louisville. They have, for a city that has over 1 million people, he has set up one voting location. This is a horrible idea. They tried this idea of having limited voting locations and doing massive mail-in voting in Georgia this past week. And it was called a spectacular mess, to use a quote from the media, a spectacular collapse of the democratic process, to quote another article. And that's what we have. We already see cases in Kentucky where people who have not requested a ballot for their home have received multiple ballots from everybody who's lived there years past. We also have multiple accounts of people who have requested their ballots quite a while ago and they still don't have it. And how do I know if I fill out my ballot and I mail it in, how do I know that got where it was supposed to and my vote was counted? This is a horrible idea. If we're able to let everybody go over to Walmart and we're all using, if you ever go to Walmart, they got 18,000 checkout lanes, but they really only got about 3 that work at any one time, which means all the hundreds and hundreds of people who go to Walmart in any given day, they're all checking out on about 3 or 4 lanes. And if everybody's able to do that now for months during the height of the virus, why can't everybody go and use the same checkout, the same voting machines in different polling locations? You'd actually have less people at any one polling location than you would in a Walmart or Kroger of a major city. I mean, because they deal with thousands and thousands every single day. And he's been saying, well, we don't have enough volunteers to work the polls. I'd sure like to see those numbers. And in addition to that, today, the National Guard, God bless them, the National Guard came out and said, we will volunteer to work the polling locations. So there is no excuse not to have the polling locations where people can go and vote instead of trying to corral everybody to one place, which would be less safe, and you could actually get more people to do the voting. Now, one other issue that went on during the press conference today, Governor Beshear was asked about this defund the police movement and whether he would be for that or whether he would be against it. His answer was to talk about something else and funding some other people. And so the media came back to him. Good for them. And they're like, well, that's interesting, but you didn't answer our question. What about defunding the police? So he answered something else and didn't talk about it again. And wouldn't come out and say, listen, this is a good idea or this is a bad idea. I personally have more respect for somebody who's on the opposite side of the fence than somebody who won't even say where they stand. And if Lord should see fit that I should get into any kind of an office one day, I'll guarantee you this, I'm not going to defund the police. If anything, I want to give them more funding. I think the thin blue line should be made a little bit thicker, and if there's been any evidence for that in the last few weeks, we were sure given that. So that's a little bit about what he's doing, what he's saying, the promises that he's made this last week or so. He's promised to give all black Kentuckians 100% free health coverage. He said, though, they have twice as many cases as they do population percentage. Did you know, however, that the Hispanic Kentuckians, even though they only make up 3% of Kentucky's population, they make up 15% of the cases? And I don't know why he didn't bring them up. They actually are suffering at a rate 5 times more than their percentage as opposed to 2 times. So again, making promises that he has no way to fulfill. But as it says in the song, we'll be watching every vow that he makes, every smile that he fakes. And I hope that you will be watching on each video that comes out so that you can be informed. Until next time, I'm Lee Watts for Patriot Point. Stand strong, Kentucky.